Buddha was asked, "What have you gained from meditation?" He replied, "Nothing. However, let me tell you what I lost: anger, anxiety, depression, insecurity, and fear of death." Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Nishant, and welcome to another episode of the Nishant Garg Show. My job on this show is to extract information on mindfulness, personal development, spirituality, and basically everything which improves the quality of life. I am on a mission to spread mindfulness. I cannot do this alone, and I need your support. My today's guest is Jennifer. She graduated from UCLA with a Master of Public Health in Community Health Sciences with a specialization in Health Educator, and holds a BA in Psychology and minor in Sociology from UC Davis. Early on, Jennifer became interested in public health through her first-hand experience as a child of immigrant refugees who had barriers navigating the healthcare systems in the US. She is passionate about health and wellness, creating leaders, mindfulness, transformation, and inspiring authentic. Currently, she is a health educator and enjoys teaching about health and nutrition to school-age children. Jennifer has been on her mindfulness journey personally for 10 years. As a child, she was sensitive, intuitive, creative, and empathetic. She had always had a keen interest in seeking deeper inner truth. However, she did not have resources nor an outlet to support the desire. Hence, when the practice of mindfulness was introduced to her a decade ago, as an adult in her first therapy session, it opened a whole new world of possibilities and clarity. Since then, she has immersed herself into any work and books about mindful living. Her vision for the world is creating a safe environment where everyone can be authentic to reach their highest potential. In this podcast, Jennifer is going to share information on how to set morning routines through meditation, journaling, visualization, reading, exercising, to really elevate our happiness to the next level. So let's begin this episode. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nishant.
I'm so thankful to you for accepting my opportunity and being on the show. I'm so honored to have you on the show.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me. I can't wait.
Yeah, and I remember we met in a transformation workshop, and you were coaching me for a few months, and I had gotten so many breakthroughs at that point that I cannot imagine. And based on those breakthroughs, I'm able to start this podcast. So thank you again for giving me that amazing coaching that I can create something bigger for myself and something bigger for the whole community in this mindfulness space.
Well, you're welcome. And, I acknowledge you for putting in the work. All I did was ask questions and you put in the work. So that's part of the journey, is continuously putting your best foot forward and continuously learning and getting guidance from people.
Yep. And I was doing some research on your profile. So there are a lot of pieces that I would love to connect so that we can create something from this episode, and people who listen to this, they can go in the world and apply real mindfulness practices and any routines and habits in their own personal life.
Yeah.
So you were an immigrant in the United States.
No,
right?
actually, my parents were immigrant refugees, but I'm the first generation that was born here. Yeah.
Okay, can you please elaborate more on your parents' immigrant refugee part?
Yeah.
How did it happen?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. So my parents, they arrived in the U.S. about 40 years ago as immigrant refugees. They were seeking asylum because they supported the American CIA in the secret war in Laos. So they were getting persecuted by the communist forces in Laos that took over the country. And so, they were displaced, and so as many of their family and friends too. And they lost a lot of their family and relatives to the war. I read an article that about one American soldier that was saved, 25 Hmong lives were lost. And so we definitely sacrificed a majority of our community to this war. And so after losing part of their identity, my parents came to the U.S. and, definitely just experienced a lot of like hardships because there was no Hmong community that was established in the U.S. Like the Hmong language was as a new language to the U.S. as English was a new language to the Hmong community. And so my parents definitely came here without knowing any English too, and experienced a lot of hardships because of that.
Do they speak English now?
No, my parents don't speak English at all. They're limited. My mom can say a few words, and my dad, he could read and say a few words too, but they don't really use the language.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking this question is I'm an immigrant in the United States. I came to US in 2014. So I can understand the pain and the process of understanding new culture and totally understanding. I came from India and it's totally a different culture, different game, so it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So how old were you at the time when your parents moved here?
Actually, I was born here. So my parents, so I was born here. My parents, let's see, my sister was born in 1982. So that was the year that they came here. And then then I was born. So my parents actually had 9 children. So I was born like 5 years afterwards. So they weren't here long before I was born.
Okay. So as part of immigrant family, did you have to go through tough times in your childhood?
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew up very traditional. And so, my whole life goal, I thought, was to become a daughter-in-law and, be well-versed in appeasing elders, maintaining good manners, doing the household chores and cooking and having children. That was my life goal. It's hard because as a Hmong daughter, oftentimes, especially maybe it doesn't apply to me too, but a lot of people have felt, this biculturalism in us, like I identify as Hmong American. So I have this Hmong side that's saying, oh, be a daughter-in-law. And I have this American side where, oh, I can be independent, and I can have a future in a life and I don't need to rely on a husband to make it in life, So definitely very difficult to kind of balance those two cultures in me that I was born into. My parents definitely woke us up early every morning to learn how to cook and clean. We had to go farming. My parents were farmers at that time too. So, it was a lot of work, a lot of labor work. And a lot of people they laugh at me sometimes when I say that I had to wake up and cook and clean and like do farming stuff. Like, really? I was like, yeah. I was like, you guys didn't have that experience? I was like, oh man, totally different. But that's part of what makes, growing up being Hmong unique for me. And I get to share that with people.
Yeah, so that Hmong, right? Hmong, do you say Hmong
the
or
H
Hmong?
The H is silent, so Hmong.
Okay, so the Hmong community. Can you please elaborate more on that community if people are not aware of that Hmong community?
Yeah, so the Hmong, we don't have our own country. So a lot of people always ask, where are you from? What country? And I can't say per se where, but I know that my parents were born in Laos. As for generations before, there has been a lot of oral stories saying that we came from Mongolia or China, derived from there. And then through a series of wars that we lost, we finally migrated to Laos. And you find a lot of the Hmong still in the mountainous regions wherever you go. So we're in the southern part of China, mountainous regions of Laos and Thailand and Vietnam. So that's where you would find the community. But every single community, we have we have a different accent. So every country that we've gone to, we've had like a Hmong Lao accent, a Hmong Chinese accent, or a Hmong Thai accent. So the language, the foundation of the language is similar. However, with the accent, sometimes it's really tough to understand them too. So there's no core language that exists. It's basically, it's changed so much that we don't even know what the core language is.
So which accent do you prefer, or which accent are you comfortable with?
Because my parents were born in Laos, I have the Hmong Lao accent.
So when growing up in the United States and your parents did not understand English, so how do you deal with that situation? Because you had to speak English in the schools and with your friends, and your parents did not understand. So how did you deal with that education system in your childhood days?
Yeah, so with my parents, they definitely encouraged us to speak Hmong at the home, and then when we do go out, we spoke English. It was my parents were okay with us speaking English too. They weren't opposed to it. However, they wanted us to speak English, so then that way we can communicate to our future in-laws or relatives. And that was the main reason why my mom to this day doesn't speak English. She just strictly speaks Hmong only.
So in those childhood days, were you given some belief systems that you have to be a daughter-in-law or you have to be in a certain way? Because Asian culture and Indian culture are kind of similar, I think, because as far I grew up in Indian culture. Because we were told to do certain things by the age of 30, you have to get married, you have to have kids. I'm 32 right now and I'm not married, I don't have kids. I'm single. So I'm doing things which is against Indian culture, ideally in my whole family. So, and this was tough for me to adopt this lifestyle. I had to unlearn all those belief system, and I'm still working on that. So how that belief system, Asian Hmong community belief system, installed in you, and how did you navigate through that process through your childhood days? If you would like to elaborate more on that.
Yes, thank you for asking. So definitely my parents expected me to. My parents were progressive to an extent where, daughters learn all these household chores, and then also my parents allowed us to go to college, join sports, and did a lot of things that a lot of parents normally wouldn't. And I think a lot of it came from my parents' past too. My dad was an orphan. Lost his parents at a young age, and so he grew up really poor and always valuing education. So that's why he pushed us to college. And then my mother also grew up in a very abusive household. So for her, the only way she saw any way that we can have a future was also education. So in a sense, they wanted us to be culturally attuned, but also at the same time pursue our dreams and also school too. So for me, definitely a lot of the weight or the burden was always trying to maintain that culture and like showing up early to help and to get married at a certain age, like I thought my oldest sister got married when she was 23, and I thought, wow, that was the age I was going to get married, I thought that was like really old. And then here I am 33 and I'm still not married. And yeah, of course, if my parents are still, very traditional, it would be highly looked upon or frowned upon. But I think because my parents also have this like progressive side, they think like, okay, you know what? As long as she's independent, she's got her degrees and like she seems pretty set. We don't have to bother her about it, if I was single, I think they probably might worry a little bit, but I think because I did find Joe too, my life partner, that my parents are a little bit okay, but definitely it was hard to, And
I would like to ask you here. So love marriages is it common in your Hmong community that you find your partner on your own and then you go with that partner to your parents? Hey, mom and dad, I want to marry this
Oh,
person. Is it common?
yeah. So, that is common, but we also, traditionally, if a man did like a woman, he could also, kidnap her too and bring her to his house and marry her that
Okay.
same week. So we do have that practice, but
Wow.
it's so old that nowadays it's not as practiced as much because, you know, times have changed and
Times have changed.
people are respecting, the new cultural norms of, hey, allow people to find the love of their life and let them marry. So we don't have as many arranged marriages or like kidnapping happening anymore.
Hmm.
Now everyone's kind of open to finding their own relationships.
I think this concept of arranged marriage came from India, I guess.
Yeah, it's all throughout, Asia, right? Like arranged marriages is in abundance.
Yeah, if you cannot find a girl or a boy, your parents will help you out.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm really fortunate that I was able to be given that freedom. My parents never really gave us any restrictions. They did really want us to find someone who was Hmong too. I just happened to be lucky that Joe is Hmong too, which probably saved me a lot of headache.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah, I
great.
won a lot of brownie points there because some of my siblings aren't married to someone who is Hmong, so it's difficult for my parents to communicate. And
Yeah.
I remember my older sister when she first brought in her first boyfriend who was white into our house. My parents got so freaked out they like called the whole entire clan to come to our house, and we had a huge meeting in their living room talking about like this interracial like dating between my
Uh-huh.
sister and this guy. And that was my first like experience of like, whoa, I didn't know it was such a big deal, but then
Yeah,
now a lot of folks are being open-minded and they're seeing that, we're acclimating and acculturating into American culture, and that's just the norm,
yeah,
we can't just date Hmong people anymore. There's so many options now, right? So,
that's correct.
yeah.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to your experience. When I was growing up, my mom did not have any father figure, and my dad did not have any father figure as well. So I they installed this belief in me that I have to get education, I have to make a lot of money, I have to be bigger in my life, I have to make a lot of money and do this and do that. And in fact, when I was in fourth grade, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew at that point that I have to be an engineer when I was in fourth grade, because when I was seeing in my family, everybody was either doctor or engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So because if I'm not engineer or doctor in India, then I'm not good enough. My success is defined by my designation, my
Yeah.
post. And it is still the same in some parts of the country, and it takes time to find our purpose, and we will connect to that purpose in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned that so I think when you were coaching last time that you were empathetic as a child. You were was it did it come to you naturally, or
Yeah.
did you inherit that from your parents?
Yeah.
Because this skill is not natural to me.
Yeah.
I have never been an empathetic, and I practice now after learning a lot of stuff from Brené Brown.
Yeah.
I practice being empathetic because it can change the world.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely got it from my parents. Both my parents, sometimes it could be to a fault too that they are such good people and they are such people pleasers in a way, that makes them good people. And
Yeah.
I remember growing up, I was so frustrated with that because I'm like, why would you bend over backwards for this person that barely does anything for you? And it's the fact that they keep this thing in mind of like when you give and you give, karma will always be on your side. And
Hmm.
back then I didn't understand that because I just felt such injustice for my parents. And then I thought, oh, I'm never going to be like them. And then as I grew up, I'm like, oh shit, like, sorry, excuse me, that,
No problem.
that
Go ahead.
I'm like exactly like them, and that's something that I'm working on personally to myself is how do I still receive the acknowledgement and love from people without having to lose my power or feeling like, I overdid myself, where I feel like I'm not, where I'm not losing myself, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly over here, that you are saying that you can love people, but it is difficult for you to receive love from others.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that what I'm hearing?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
because I'm the same thing. I'm in the same boat, and I really work at it to receive love from people.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody, that's just a natural instinct of us is to desire love and to feel like you belong. And
Yeah.
I think because my parents didn't feel like they belonged, because of their stories that they lived, that they, without probably knowing it consciously, they imposed that on their children too. And, that's how I got those tendencies, to constantly worry about people, worry about how they're thinking, what are their thoughts. And I became so good at just analyzing people's like physical features. And I'm like, oh, wow, they must be feeling this way. So I get to change my responses to match theirs. So then that way, it was like a calculation.
Kind of a people pleasing.
Yeah, it was like a calculation all the time, because I wanted that validation so much.
And I was exactly the same person in my life for first 29 years.
Yeah.
I was people pleasing and I was becoming passive aggressive over the period of time.
Yeah.
And if somebody said something to me, even though I did not want to fit in,
Yeah.
I was trying to fit in into their life, into the community, but I wasn't enjoying that.
Yeah.
And as a result, I was becoming passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And one point came when I used to burst into tears, into anger, resentments, and I totally relate with that.
Yeah,
scenario.
yeah, definitely. So I became really sensitive and attuned to like just people's thoughts, feelings, physical reactions, and I think that just made me more empathic too, in a way where I'm able to sense things easier and have a lot of empathy too and compassion.
That's awesome. Empathy and compassion, they are great. Do you ever practice, or do you practice self-compassion? Because compassion toward others is one thing, and self-compassion is another thing.
Yes, yeah, that's something that it's an ongoing journey for me and for many people. I practice it. However, it's not where I want it to be yet, and I get to just embrace where I'm at right now with that. I think that, the last 3 years, I finally got to do a lot more deeper work. And that's allowed me to identify and put into words, my thoughts, my feelings and sensations, and allowing me to have compassion for myself, to speaking it into the universe, because before I used to silently suffer, and now that I have words to describe the things that I'm experiencing, it just relieves so much tension and burden in my heart and my soul.
Yeah.
And so,
I would be interested to know what happened 3 years ago.
Yeah. So 3 years ago, I got this job that I thought it was going to be like it was my dream job, actually. I was like, oh man, I get to be a project manager and I get to work in, a high-rise building, and, I'm going to be creating so many like new experiences and opportunity. And, that was my intention when I came into this work. And then I didn't realize how my upbringing had really, put an attack on my soul in some ways. For example, not being assertive enough, people pleasing, and being indecisive, and then perfectionism and fear of being found out and being an imposter, like all of
Uh-huh.
that started getting to me in this job because it was a very high stress job. And because of the stress, all of everything started compounding and also
Hmm.
magnifying too, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, not
Mhm.
to interrupt you
Yeah.
here. What kind of job was that?
Yeah, it was a project manager position in the healthcare field.
Okay.
And so, yeah, definitely because of the stress that I felt, definitely everything started magnifying. I think it didn't help too that I allowed my boss and like my coworkers to talk down to me too. And
Hmm.
I didn't know how to be assertive in a way that would put my foot down and they wouldn't like mess with me anymore. I couldn't find the words. I always,
Hmm.
I would let the experience happen, and afterward I'd be like, oh my gosh, I should have said this and should have said that, and I really beat myself up. And because I allowed that happen so much that I got to a point where I didn't feel like going to work anymore, where I felt like I wasn't valued. I was always being belittled and bullied in a
Hmm.
sense at work. And that really broke my spirit down. I started asking God every day, like, God, can you just send me a sign that, I was not meant to be here, or that, that if you can just take away this pain. And I prayed for that for like so many months. And finally, I realized that, you know what?
Hmm.
I can make the choice to leave this. I get to do things that inspires me and brings me joy. And why am I doing things that I don't like? What would it look like if I did things that I actually like so that I could stop complaining about, the
Hmm.
suffering? And so I finally quit that job, 3 years ago. And I never looked back because it was such a, it was such a pivotal moment for me to get deeper into my mindfulness
Yeah.
and mindfulness practice, because I went on a meditation retreat
Wow.
one week later, and
After quitting your
yeah,
job.
after quitting my job, I went to a meditation retreat for 5 days to really do a lot of healing, because I was so confused about what had just happened. And I made this courageous decision. Now I don't have a job. I don't have a backup plan. I'm like, oh shoot, what am I doing? And then also thinking like, oh my gosh, I failed my parents, and
Hmm.
failing people who looked up to me, and just feeling a lot of like emotions at that time. And so I went to a meditation retreat, and I saw this guy just like smiling all the time, walking, and his ways of being was so inspiring. And I was just like, gosh, what would I do to like get to look like that, And one day I finally caught him at like a meeting, after a meeting, and I just sat down, chatted with him, and he invited me to this like transformational workshop. And in like this 5 minute conversation, I was like, okay, I'm game. I'm going.
It was
So
three years ago.
yes, 3 years ago.
Okay.
So,
So I would like to ask you a couple of questions over here. I'm kind of very curious about all this story that you have, and it's so inspiring. It's so empowering to others because there are a lot of people who are in the same phase. They may not be enjoying their job, but they have a lot of fear. They may be going through uncertainty to give up their job and trying new things in life.
yeah.
And you were in that job. You were not happy. You were not enjoying because people were bullying you, and you were not living up to your expectations in that. So your ways of being were not aligned to your values. So at what point did you decide you have had enough and you cannot move on with this job or move on with this life anymore?
Let's see. There was one particular moment where my boss, like I had written an email, and she wanted to review the email before I sent it. And she fixed a small grammar in my email and made a big
Wow.
deal about it. And I was just thinking to myself, like, wow, like, why do I have to sit here and waste my time on someone who wants to fix this like small grammar in this like huge email? Like I just thought to myself, like, what kind of what kind of life do I want to create for myself? And is this the life that I want? And something so small and simple like that just clicked
Yeah.
for me.
It's a trigger, and that triggered you for your
Yeah.
lifelong transformation. That's awesome. And you did mention that you were not assertive in your job. So were you having the same ways of being in your own personal life? Or were you different in your personal life and you were different in your job?
Yeah, definitely. I see the overflow of it in my own personal life, where I had a lot of friends who I always listened and I always was like their friend. And, I was always like rooting for them. But
Mm-hmm.
I realized there was a quote that said that a friend who always goes along with you is not a true friend, but someone who challenges you is your true friend. And I
Wow.
realized then that I wasn't a true friend to them because I was just allowing them to be who they are, but I didn't make an impact to change their lives in a way that could even elevate them, to their highest potential.
Yeah. This is very interesting. I was the opposite in the same situation. I was very assertive in my job, but I was not assertive in my personal life. I was letting people to jump on me and do whatever they wanted to do, but I was totally opposite in my job. Yeah, and then you started your transformation journey 3 years ago. But before the transformation journey, you went on meditation retreat. Can you please elaborate more on that meditation retreat? What you did and what were your breakthroughs in that?
Yeah. So my friend had been inviting me to this monastery in Escondido near San Diego, and it's called Deer Park. And she had been inviting me to this place for a while or been mentioning about it. And after I quit my job, I just decided, hey, why don't I look into this finally, And it just turned out they had a 5-day meditation retreat. And it was fairly inexpensive. I was sold because I was like, wow, this is a place where I can grow. I can meet new people, like-minded people, and also I could heal because it was up in the mountains. So I went on this meditation retreat and I had a very somber feeling at the beginning because I was just so bitter about what had just happened with my job. And then driving there, seeing nature, I was wanting to enjoy nature, but my mind was somewhere else too, about the future, about what am I going to do with my life at the same time. And then when I went to this 5-day meditation retreat, there was like, for once in my life, there was like singing and music. And that was such an interesting like experience for me. I was like, wow, you can sing to, like singing is a meditation. Like they made songs that were part of mindfulness. And as they sung that first song, it made me so teary. I cried so hard that first day because for once I allowed music to penetrate me, to really hear the words. And the song was about arriving home. And I didn't realize in that moment that I was home, home in my body, home with these strangers. I was home just by me planting my feet on the ground. And that was such an emotional experience for me. I had never experienced that. And so, yeah, the meditation retreat definitely changed my perception about mindfulness as a whole. Like to this day, I allowed music into my life. I changed my thought about meditation, that meditation had to be only sitting down and being silent, right? And there I learned that meditation could be a work meditation where you can do dishes, you can clean and still be mindful. You can go on a walking meditation and be silent.
Yeah.
You can, do so many things that's meditative and
being
mindful.
present.
Yes.
Being present in the moment.
Yes.
And you mentioned that walking meditation.
Yeah.
I do this all the time. So when I'm walking, while walking, I'm breathing, inhaling and exhaling and chanting these words, relax, relax, release, release, transcendental meditation.
Yeah.
So do you have any specific meditation you do now in your current life?
Yeah. So for me right now, my current meditation is, I do like silent meditation and I do also guided meditation when there are days when my mind is like going like everywhere. I do.
Then you prefer guided meditation if your mind is going
Yes,
everywhere.
definitely. Because when I'm hearing the voices or when I'm hearing the guidance, my mind is super concentrated on that. But I do prefer just silent meditation because I feel like that's the most challenging for me, is to just really stay focused and focus on the breath. And I just learned that the simple definition of mindfulness is be here now. And
Be here now.
yeah, isn't that so amazing? Like so short. And I was just like, wow, after I learned that, I just started doing that in my silent meditations, like be here now and focusing on the breath. And that's really allowed me to meditate longer too.
Yeah. In fact, I was reading one book yesterday and it said, there is nowhere to go. What you want is already here. Be here now.
Wow.
So you prefer silent meditation, and when your mind is overwhelming, so you prefer guided meditation. So how many minutes of meditation do you pursue every day?
Yeah. So every day I do 10 to 15 minutes, and I would like to do it longer. However, I started getting into this routine called Miracle Morning. I don't know if you heard about it.
I've heard of that. I've heard about
You've heard about it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I started getting into that routine. So I went from like a 20 to 30 minute meditation to like, I shrunk it down to 10 to 15 minutes because there were so many things that I wanted to accomplish. So, part of the Miracle Morning is doing 6 things, which is, and they call it the savers. And so savers, when you spell it out, it's SAVERS. And so it means scribing, silence, scribing, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and silence. And so because there's so many of these elements that I wanted to complete, and I also didn't want to like you could literally, so far I've only managed to do it within an hour and a half to 2 hours. I cannot do it within any less than that because I'm so intrigued by it that it makes me want to do more and more and add more minutes. But I realize that it's taking a huge chunk of my morning too, so I can't meditate longer,
So I had planned this whole Miracle Morning at the later point, but we will go along with this. Now I'm shifting my gears here, So let's talk about Miracle Morning, and then I will go back somewhat in the past. Okay? So from present to past, I was creating this story from past to present. So, let's go from present to past. So as part of your Miracle Morning, you are doing meditation for about 10 to 15 minutes. And before that, you used to do it for 20 to 30 minutes. And now this Miracle Morning, you have to do 6 different things. So you cannot do it for 20 to 30 minutes. And this is part of your morning routine, right?
Yep.
So what time do you wake up usually in the morning to do this Miracle Morning?
Yeah, so every day I wake up between 5 to 6 p.m. Sorry, 5 to 6 a.m. So it just
that's great.
Yeah, so it just depends on, like, if I had a late night, then I'll move the time. If I had an early night, then I'll move back the time. So I adjust it because, and then I don't judge myself for doing that because a lot of times people are like, oh, wake up at 5. But I feel like for me, life is always like going up and down, so you never know. So I aim at 5 to 6 p.m., 6 a.m.
I used to be like that. I used to wake up at 5:30, 6 a.m. Now I wake up at 7 a.m. But now I think about what is that one thing I can do in the morning that will give me the most juice in my whole day. So I meditate for 20 to 30 minutes every day in the morning. Okay, amazing. So coming back to that Miracle Morning. So what is that first, I would say, first element that you start doing in the morning?
Yeah, so in the morning, I started doing journaling every morning because of the book, The Artist's Way, by Julia Cameron. She was talking about how as soon as you wake up, that's when your mind is the freshest, and that's when your thoughts are also very fresh too. So the first thing you do is always journal every single thought that comes in your mind as soon as you wake up. And so I was doing that for like a month or so. And then I started thinking to myself, okay, what would it look like if I just changed it up a little bit, So
Mm-hmm.
I go into waves. I switch it up once in a blue moon. So, but now my current state is meditating first, and then
Mm-hmm.
doing affirmations, visualizations, and then journaling, and then reading and exercising. So,
Okay,
mm-hmm,
so you meditate for 10 to 15 minutes, and
mm-hmm,
it can be silent meditation
yep.
or it can be guided meditation. I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling with meditation? A lot of people want to meditate.
Yeah.
They want, what advice would you recommend to them? How they can they start?
My advice is be the observer. Allow these thoughts and these whatever to come into your mind. Just allow them, embrace them, because a lot of times people think that meditation is supposed to be a certain way, and that's a lot of judgment. And so
Mm-hmm.
practice non-judgment. Come from a place of I'm observing these thoughts, and when I say that I'm the observer, all of a sudden all these thoughts start disappearing. For some reason, they're like, oh, someone's being really actively like watching us. And then the thoughts go away for some reason. I find that really comical for me in my head. But,
Yeah.
I think that really helps me. Just be the observer, embrace it.
Yeah. And thoughts come and go. We don't have to identify with those thoughts.
Yes.
And somebody who is starting new in meditation, they can start with 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. They don't have to start with 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Personally, I started with 2 minutes
Mm-hmm.
over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can easily do it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a slow process.
Yeah.
And meditation will not change your life in one day. It's a whole different process.
Yes.
It takes time. It takes
Yes.
months.
It's
And
one step at a
sometimes
time.
and we meditate and we think nothing is happening. Nothing will change. Everything is going to be same. But our mindfulness senses will get better and better. We can deal with our emotions and our reaction time gets better. We can respond to situations in a better way. We can take pauses in a tough situation before we react or respond.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
So after meditation, you have visualization,
Affirmations?
affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
How does your affirmation look like?
My affirmations. So this is what I started to do because I realized that the affirmations get to be felt in every single cell in me in order for me to speak it, to believe it, and to internalize it. So I started recording myself saying the affirmation and then leaving 5 to 10 seconds in between for me to repeat it. And so when I would say my affirmation, I would repeat it and I would say it, and then I would use a lower voice at the end to internalize it. Say, for example, one of my affirmation is that I am positive, kind, and respectful to myself. And that's one thing that I've been practicing a lot. And so when I say this, I say it loudly, then in a medium tone, and then in a low tone, and then I say silently to myself. So when I do in that
Awesome.
step, it allows me to internalize it.
I used to do a lot of affirmation a year ago. I used to write a lot. I used to affirm a lot of affirmations. But I'm not a fan of affirmation these days, but I have very few affirmation in the morning. I tell myself I'm a self-reliant, compassionate, and energetic. I have 3 words for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there needs to be some action behind affirmation. If we keep affirming, I'm positive, I'm this, I'm that.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is no action behind it, Jim Rohn, this is very funny. Jim Rohn mentioned that affirmation is an illusion. There is no action.
Yeah. I've read so many books and so many articles about how affirmation, there's such a controversy about it because, it's like, part of me is like, okay, I believe that it works, so therefore it works for me, But if I start thinking of a new perception about it, then it's going to change too, So I think in my current state right now, I am internalizing it. And also I don't say a lot of affirmations because I want to keep it short and focus on those couple affirmation only. Because if I say too much, then it's just out in this universe, and it's just wasting space in my mind. Whereas if I can focus on, 3 affirmations that I really care about, that I really want to work on, and do that for several months, and then when I accomplish that, then I can move on to new affirmations.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
that's the kind of like way I've worked it out. But yeah, I hear what you're saying about, sometimes affirmation could be an illusion.
Yeah. So do you think affirmation can really make some difference in our life?
I believe that affirmations will make a difference. Only if that person internalizes it, and if every single cell in in their body truly feels it. If you don't feel it and you can't make a connection to it, it's not going to work out. It's not going to happen.
And I think it can be related to our internal self-talk. Because we are changing our internal self-story, that we are positive, we are energetic, we are compassionate, or we are this and we are that. We are moving from negativity to positivity. So it's inner game. We are changing our inner game by allowing positive and kind words to ourselves.
Oh yeah, completely. I agree. Like changing the subconscious too.
Yes, changing subconscious mind. Yeah. So if our listeners, they can start with maybe 2 or 3 words of affirmation in the morning or any time in the day.
Yeah.
It will make some difference, but you got to believe it, because when you believe it, you see it. This is a quote from none other than Wayne Dyer. When you believe it, you see it.
Yes.
Yeah. So after affirmation, what do you have? And
So after affirmations is visualization.
Can you elaborate on? I'm definitely willing to learn from you.
Definitely visualization is the one that I struggle the most with too. Because it changes all the time for me. And so it's not consistent. And I've thought about, okay, what would it look like if I wrote down my visualization and then I recorded myself saying the visualization, so then I can walk myself through it. And it worked to a certain extent, but now I realize, like, I started cutting out the story and the dreams and all that stuff. And I started just focusing on today. What am I wanting to accomplish today? How will I do that? Walking myself through the day and getting all my tasks completed, and what kind of ways of being will I be experiencing, like setting the intention for the day. And that really supports me. So I use visualization in that sense.
And how long is that visualization process?
Yeah, so that visualization process can range from 5 to 10 minutes. I change it up.
So about 10 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of affirmation, and then 5 to 10 minutes of visualization. Okay. And then you have journaling?
Journaling.
So journaling differs from person to person.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to know, what do you write in that? For me, I just write down everything, all those doubts, insecurities, all those self-comparison that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. I write down everything, and then I really feel so lightweighted that, okay, I can think about it now. I can literally think clearly now. It's on my paper. Nothing is in my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can spend 30 minutes on that.
Yeah.
So what does your journaling look like?
My journaling, what it looks like is I used to just write down everything that was in my mind and my thoughts, and every single word, literally everything that I'm thinking, I would just put it down, even if it doesn't even make sense with the previous sentence, I just write it down. But now I've read some other, I was listening to a podcast, and there was this guy who was saying, he does intentional journal writing too. So now I've broken it up where half of my time will be focused on just writing whatever my thoughts are. And then the other half of my time is focused on intentional journal writing. So asking myself questions, what are 10 things that I'm grateful for today? Or questions like, well, how do I define self-love? Or what am I resisting? Or what comfort zones am I not letting go of? And just really exploring those pieces a little deeper.
Yeah, this is so interesting because I have been doing similar thing, but I did not know the distinction. So now you are saying intentional journaling and free flow. In free
Mm-hmm.
flow journaling, you can write whatever is there in your mind.
Yeah.
With intentional journaling, you are asking yourself good questions because when you ask something good from your mind will come up with an answer. For
Yes.
instance, I asked myself, I did not know that this is intentional journaling. I asked myself, okay, Nishant, I'm thinking too much. I'm making it overcomplicated. What would it look like if this podcasting is easier? What would it look like if this networking is simpler? You know,
Yeah.
asking simple, yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. This is intentional journaling.
Yeah.
It's great. And do you do it for 10 minutes?
Oh, this one, I spend the most time on this. I just love journaling. I could journal like literally for a long, long time, but because I'm trying to keep it within 2 hours, I journal at least 20 minutes. I've been going to 30 minutes, but I'm really trying to like pull it back a little bit. I just love it so much. So 20
So,
minutes.
so your morning routine consists of 2 hours, and it
Yeah.
can be scary for a lot of people. This is
It can
scary to me. Yeah.
exactly, and it's like that's why I wake up so early so that way I can manage it. From 5 to 7 or 6 to 8. Like really managing those 2 hours so intentionally.
Yeah, and the we get to understand over here that we do not have to do these things for 2 hours every day.
Yep.
It is good if we can manage time,
Yep.
but maybe your somebody's schedule doesn't allow. If you can pick one thing, it could be journaling, meditation, reading, exercise, any one thing that you can do at least for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It will make a lot of difference in your
Yes.
day-to-day emotional life.
Yes, I agree. So yes, definitely when time calls for it, definitely you can do all of these in like 6 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely for me, I feel like there's a lot more of it if I spend at least an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning on myself.
Yeah.
But yes, like you said, if you don't have time, you don't have to do all of these. You can do one or
Yes.
two.
So, Jennifer, I want to ask you this. If you do not have time and you want to pick one thing from these six components, what would that be one thing for you?
My one thing be would be journaling.
Hmm.
Journaling,
Interesting.
journaling because when I just let all my thoughts and everything all on paper, I can leave with like a sound, clear mind. And in
Yeah.
a way, it serves as meditation. In a way, it serves as like, I guess, exercise for the brain, gives me energy.
Hmm.
Um, and it affirms things for me, or it also helps me visualize. So I feel like journaling encompasses like everything.
Hmm. Interesting. And I love this fact that you have this big block of time in the morning where you can do most of the things. And I used to do all these things in the morning, but now it's kind of scattered. I can do these things at any point of time, but I prefer doing meditation one thing in the morning, whatever is going on in my life. If I meditate, I feel so great. Otherwise, it takes me time to get back to my emotions, positive emotions.
Yeah.
So we can journal at any point in our day. We can read any point. We can visualize at any point. It doesn't have to be in the morning, but having some practices in the morning is always great. It will make huge difference.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But
And
if you ask me, I would do all of these in
yeah,
6 minutes.
six. Yeah.
Yeah, I would do all of them. I wouldn't just pick one, but I would do all six.
Yeah. Okay. And then you move on to reading.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of reading do you
Oh
prefer?
gosh, I do a lot of like self-development books. So that's and before it was like mindfulness and meditation, but now it's more about developing my mindset. Sometimes it has business components to it. So
Mm-hmm.
I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books. So a lot of times they recommend a lot of books and other podcasts too. So,
Mm-hmm.
from there, I just like, I create this huge like reading list and I'm just slowly checking it off.
That's great. Because reading can be tough. Non-fiction reading can be tough for a lot of people. And it
Yeah.
was tough for me 2 years ago. And when I started getting into that, life started changing at all.
Yeah.
So what book would you recommend to somebody who is new into this personal development? And I want to make this point here. Personal development is not something to fix yourself. You are wholehearted. It's about raising your consciousness and awareness. It's nothing to do with fixing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
So
I have
what?
so many books. I don't even know where to start. Let's see.
Please.
Gosh, let's see. Man, so many books. Okay, I feel like if someone's really just starting out and really want to just have like a system, I would say The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Like honestly, I think that book is good for anyone and anywhere in their life. It could be someone who's a beginner, someone who's been practicing mindfulness for a long time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could really, really support them. But I would say my next book is, The Gifts of Imperfections by Brene Brown.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah,
I love that.
that book really, really resonated with me. Like, I felt like it healed my soul in and out, you know?
Oh,
But yeah, I would say that book too. Those are good beginner
yeah,
books.
gifts. Yeah, this is about embracing your imperfection.
Yeah.
You are whatever you have. And I struggle with a lot of imperfection in my life. But after reading so many books, I can say that I can embrace my imperfection. I do not want to be perfect. I'm okay with what I have. But if there is a possibility to improve it, to polish it, yes,
Yeah.
why not? Yeah, great. So, Morning Miracles and the Gifts of Imperfection. Great. And so, which book would you like to gift the most? Would you pick one of these two books, or is there any other book you would like to gift the most?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I would say I would probably give those two books out the most because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my friends and folks that I like am around, like they're new to meditation mindfulness, and I feel like this would be a good book. But
Yeah.
if it's someone who's been in the work for a long time and like understands the language and like all this stuff, I would recommend, Eckhart Tolle, like The Power of Now, or
Mm-hmm.
let's see, this other book. I'm trying to think about it. Like The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, or Becoming
Mm-hmm.
Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Like, and
I
also,
love Dr. Dispenza.
right, and then also, let's see, the other book. Oh gosh, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Like,
Ah,
I think those books would be really good for people who have been in the work for a long time. Like, these books are so deep, and sometimes I find myself like going back and reading it again and reading it again until I get the sentence correct, But
yeah.
it's what I love. It's a challenge, but that's what I love about the books because it's so deep.
Yep, that's great. And Jennifer, over here, I would like to change my gears. So I would like to connect to your coaching style. So you have been a leadership and mindset coach. So what kind of coaching, what kind of mindset coaching? Because nowadays everybody is mindset coach.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of mindset coach are you, and what's your coaching style look like?
Yeah. So, my vision for a lot of things in my life is to truly create authentic spaces where folks can be their true authentic self. Did I say that right? Create safe spaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
my coaching style is definitely about accountability, about digging deep, peeling the layers and really getting down to like the subconscious. Because when we get down to the subconscious level and really creating habits and routines and to support the subconscious to create a whole new neural path. I believe that is like the door to unlimited possibilities. And so I believe that even in business and love and relationship, the common thing that I found in most people is just the automatic ways of being that folks are unwilling to let go of. And that's where I focus a lot of my coaching on is looking at those habits.
Yes. And 95%, I don't remember where I did read that. 95% of our behaviors and actions are automatic.
Yes.
And they are being driven from our subconscious. So if we can learn and practice to change our subconscious for good, it can do wonders. It can create miracles.
Yes.
Yep. So when you get a new client, and if they're not sure what change they want to have in their life, how would you navigate that client? What specific questions would you ask them?
Yeah. So usually when a client doesn't know where to start, I feel like, every time someone seeks out for like support for coaching, I feel like they always have something, but I do come across some people who say they don't know and don't know. But so what I would ask is usually I have 6 areas of their lives that I would start going through, which is, finances, which is relationships with people, which is recreation, health. I go through those elements.
And what is 4th, 5th, and 6th, if you don't mind explaining?
It's what is it? Spirituality, recreation. I don't know which one I'm missing. I cannot remember it for the life of me. I don't know if, oh, you know what? I think I separate, family from relationships.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
interesting.
like personal relationships. Yeah. Because I feel like those two, they just operate in such different ways that it doesn't really intermix. I feel like a lot of people, when they focus on, even if family life is working, relationship with a personal significant other, or friends, isn't working.
Different.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah. So this is your coaching style, and this is how, if somebody is not sure how they can move, and this is how, based on these 6 areas, then you start understanding them and start coaching them and start showing them the direction. Eventually they have to do the work, but you can be a support or accountability partner and show them the path. So what difference do you think is there between therapy and coaching?
So the difference between therapy and coaching for me is, for therapy, I feel like there is like a set guideline that that a lot of therapists and counselors get to abide by, and a lot of it is done, mostly by, the state or the government. And so I feel like for therapy, it's restricted in a sense. And I feel like for coaching, we can go anywhere and everywhere. And
do you think coaching is for everybody and therapy is not for everybody? Because some people may really need therapy process. Because coaching can be fast forward, but therapy is a slow process. Therapy and counseling is a slow process.
Yeah.
Right? Some people may want to move it forward. Some people may want to go slower.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. It just depends on the person, where they're at in their lives. If they feel like there is something chemically like imbalance, in their mind, and they really need the additional support of therapy and medicine, then I feel like that is a good route for them. But if they feel like they would like an extra push in their life, a new perspective, doing things that are out of out of the norm, and gaining new perspective in that way, I think that's a good route for them.
Yeah. And when I was doing research in your biography, I found that you received therapy 10 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you please elaborate more on that therapy process?
Yes.
10 years ago?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I was definitely going through a lot of tough times because in undergraduate, like I just felt like such an imposter. Like I felt like I didn't belong there. I was a great student in high school, and then I went to college, and then I found out, all of these students that I'm competing against, they had parents who, bought them tutoring sessions and all these things. And I started
Mm-hmm.
realizing like, oh my gosh, maybe I don't belong here. And I started doubting myself a lot. And so that's why I started going to therapy to really boost my spirit and my energy. And back then, I totally had a different mindset, and I totally stigmatized the whole process. And I only went to 2 sessions, and then I just stopped because I just started
Hmm.
feeling embarrassed about it. And then I was
In the therapy,
mhm,
in the therapy
in the
process.
therapy process. I just started feeling embarrassed about it. I was like, oh, because it's so funny because I was like, I know everything that I know how to solve my problem. And I feel like I was going to a place where I was venting, and then, my problems, I could solve them myself. And I felt like it wasn't useful for me. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe it's more for people who have deeper issues, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a good fit for me. But I also didn't know that I had the option of switching counselors too if it wasn't effective. And so,
Hmm.
in a way, I just thought, okay, maybe it wasn't for me. Maybe it's for people who have deeper issues than I have. And so I just decided not to go anymore. And I learned about the mindfulness practice in this session too, but I kept it in the back of my mind. I've done research on it. I've looked at it. I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to practice meditation. One day I'm going to do all these things. And one day turned into like, 7 years. And then I finally got into graduate school, and that's when I took it much more serious. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be in graduate school. I'm going to be under a lot more stress. So why don't I utilize the free services, while I'm here? And so I went and did that, and I had my first session, and had a perfect match with a counselor who dealt with a lot of like generational trauma, first generation college students, a lot of like people of
Interesting.
color
And
experiences.
how old were you at that time when when you got another
Uh-huh.
counselor?
I was 2012, so that was,
Okay.
oh, that
Okay.
wasn't, sorry.
8 years ago.
Yeah, so it was 8 years ago, but the other experience was like, yeah, 10 years ago. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, when I got into grad school, that's when I got to experience.
So therapy can definitely help, and it is mandatory for a lot of people who have deeper issues. They want to talk about their feelings, or maybe, sometimes we have resistance inside
Mm-hmm.
us and we do not want to open up. Maybe, do you think you had resistance
Oh
10 years
yeah.
ago?
Oh yeah,
That,
definitely. I had resistance, I had judgment, I had all sorts of thoughts in my head, and that's why I was like, this is not for me.
yeah, because the reason I'm asking is because somebody who is receiving therapy and they do not have to leave therapy because it can do wonders.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not finding the things that you want, you may try another therapist, another counselors, but it will do a lot of things. So
Yeah.
please stick with that. Try different things, try different approaches. Do not give up on that. If there is a resistance, in fact, regarding resistance, I was listening to some podcast from Aubrey Marcus, and he was saying resistance, if there is some resistance, it means we can go further in our life. Resistance can be good. It's not a negative thing. We can utilize it for our good things in life. The more we resist, we can go further in our life, but we have to channelize it in positive ways.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So therapy
Yeah.
is great, and that's how you got into mindfulness
Yes.
practices.
Yes. I definitely, like I said, therapy it could be for anyone if you make it to be, your choice. It
Yep.
just didn't work out for me.
Yep. And I want to ask you over here that what has been your favorite failure that you have learned the most from and that changed the course of your direction? Any favorite failure?
Favorite failure. My favorite failure would definitely, I would still say that my experience with that job that I had 3 years ago. I think that was in a way good for me. Um,
Hmm.
I felt like I was like always winning at life and going at every, doing everything 100%. And then when I got into that position, I just didn't feel like it was a
Yeah.
good fit for me. And even though I felt like a failure at the time, it definitely brought to surface a lot of deeper issues that I had that I had to deal with, that I got to deal with it. And now I feel like that's the silver lining of that failure is growth, is improving, it's enhancing and
Yeah.
reaching my potential.
Yeah, that's great because we all go through failures in life. And if we are not failing in life, it means we are not trying hard enough. So would you have some positive motivational words for people who are not feeling motivated by their failures? They are feeling they are not good enough. What would you advise somebody who is failing a lot and they are not able to move forward?
Hmm. Someone who's failing a lot and is not able to move on with their life or
Yeah.
feels like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say be curious. Be curious about many things. Write it all down and then get yourself in doing those things. Because I feel like when we feel like there's no purpose, no one purpose or no one why, it can get really, really confusing to really find that one thing, you know? And I feel like when you're curious, you explore and you're creative. Like, say, for
Yeah.
example, if I'm curious about sewing or fashion, whatever it is, just get into it and see if that sparks any joy, sparks any inspiration. And who knows, that might become my life career, And so I would say be curious at all times and allow that to guide you.
Yeah, be curious and having some mindfulness practices every day so that you can think about it.
Yeah.
Man, failure is okay, and doing things about it makes a difference.
Yep.
Great, Jennifer. So I want to ask you my last question over here that what is the impact you want to have on this world?
The impact that I want to have for this world is inspiring inspiring people to be great leaders. I feel like, being a leader or being a leader is part of it is just inspiring others to reach their highest potential and to allow them to flourish in their dreams and their creativity and that's what I want to do. Whether it's in education, whether it's through, health education, whether it's through coaching, I truly want to inspire the best out of everyone.
This is amazing. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time and thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Nishant, for having me. Really appreciate it. I had a
Great.
great time.
To everybody out there, thank you for listening. And you can subscribe to my show, The Nishant Garg Show, to get updates on future guests. So thank you again.